Welcome to the Rewire and Thrive podcast. I am your host, Laura Stiles, clinical hypnotherapist and parent coach at The Mindful Generation. You're in the right place if you're ready to transform your mind, break cycles, and reclaim your power for a life of purpose and freedom. Let's dive in. Hi everyone, I hope you're well. Today's episode is a bit of a random one. We have a tiny special guest, which is my son. And also, I just wanted to talk a little bit about a book that I'm reading at the moment and just focus on a tiny little part of that book that I'm finding really interesting and wanted to share with all of you, because I just tend to want to talk about the things that I'm doing currently in my life when I'm recording the podcast. And I always record the day before I put the podcast out. So I thought I'll just share a little excerpt from the book, which is all related to stress. And then we will have my eldest joining because we're going to get a little insight into his world. And it's only a couple of questions that I'm asking him, just so we can see the world through his eyes, because I think it's really fascinating when we can kind of shift our perspective and look at the world through the eyes of a child for a moment. For now, what I would like to do is just read you a little extract from the book Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend. It's so interesting. And it's just a little section about the relationship between our adrenal hormones and melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone that helps to regulate sleep and wake cycles. So it says here that as adrenal cortisol levels go up, melatonin goes down. This is the reason why we can't sleep when we're under stress. And this is served as a biological safety mechanism. So, for instance, if you were chased by a predator a few times on the way to the watering hole and then you spotted more large beasts in your territory, your body, in its innate intelligence, would want to prevent you from becoming prey yourself. In such cases, sleep and restoration become less important than surviving. So, more aptly put, staying alive by remaining awake through the night is more valuable than sleeping and risking death. When the body is trying to rest in this vigilant state, it never gets the restorative sleep it needs because of the survival chemicals like cortisol. They've switched on the survival genes. If the perceived stressor is not a saber-toothed tiger, but instead your strained relationship with your ex-spouse, whom you must interact with daily, that chronic stress keeps the survival system activated. Now, this safety valve is no longer adaptive but maladaptive, and this type of chronic stress alters typical levels of melatonin and even serotonin, knocking the body out of homeostasis. But if you lower the levels of cortisol, melatonin levels will increase. In other words, when you break the stress response by overcoming the emotional addiction to those chemicals, your body can go back to long-term building projects instead of constantly dealing with the perceived emergency. So I just find that fascinating, because the wording there that really piques my interest is the bit that says overcoming the emotional addiction, because it really is an addiction once you start to get in that cycle, especially if it was modelled to you from a young age. Once you are stuck in that constant cycle of stress, you really are addicted to it. You just get this emotional addiction, and also it means that your body is finding it addictive because the pattern just keeps repeating. And so because our subconscious governs 95% of what we do, we're essentially copying the thing we did the day before, which is probably just acting out of stress with our children, with our spouses, with work stress, whatever it might be. It tends to just be like a repetitive cycle, like a bit like Groundhog Day. And that repetitive stress cycle can impact your health in other ways. Obviously, lack of sleep is not good, and that has huge compounding effects on many areas of your life. But one of the big things it can affect is fat. So when certain people respond to stress, the body takes carbohydrates and stores them as fat. And fat is nothing more than stored energy. And so this is a result of primitive genes signalling the body to store energy in case there's a famine. Isn't that interesting? And I have heard that before, actually, on other podcasts a few years ago. It really fascinated me when I first heard that fact, because I guess if you're someone who is really addicted to stress and that impacts your sleep, it's probably highly likely that you are holding that as belly fat, and the rest of your body might be quite slim, but it can just really be held around the belly area. And obviously that doesn't mean it's going to be for everyone who has belly fat. It means that they're stressed. But I just wanted to share it because I know I talk about stress quite a lot, and I just thought that was quite a fascinating fact. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to ask my son to pop in and we're going to have a little chat. Freddie, I would like to ask you a couple of questions and you just be honest, okay? Okay. What do you think grown-ups worry about too much?
Making it so their kids are entertained and so they're okay, but you have to catch up and work and try to make everything done so you can spend time with your kids.
Oh, so you think maybe we worry about getting our work done too much?
Yeah.
Catching up
you
on
need
work?
to relax.
Oh, that's really interesting. Okay, so you would say we worry about work too much?
Yeah.
Both Mummy and Daddy?
Well, I guess Mum's mostly do this thing. It's like you worry about work and you want to get it done so you can spend time with your children.
Yeah.
Instead of working while they're just doing stuff.
Yeah. Okay. And if you were in charge of the world for a day, what would you change?
I would change all of the pollution. I would make so there's more nature so you don't chop down trees.
Oh, yeah, too many trees chopped down.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because we live near the forest? We always see them chopped down, don't we?
The trees at this point of existence are really the nature's really not growing very well.
Okay. Next question. What makes you feel the happiest and the safest?
The happiest? I like my bedroom. It makes me feel really happy and cozy because it's full of all of my wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
Like
That's nice.
my big bed and the teepee.
Mm-hmm. That make you feel safe as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else or just that?
Well, the teepee's got lots of cozy cushions and blankets and I like it.
Yeah. Nice. What is the one thing you wish grown-ups understood about kids?
Kids know the feeling, but they can't explain it because they're in a different world when they're upset. Different emotions give them different worlds, basically.
Okay.
Like when they're happy, everything's they dream of basically comes true. When they're angry, nothing goes their way. And when they're sad, it's the complete opposite of what they want. And everything doesn't make any sense in the world.
So are you saying when a young kid is really emotional, it's hard for grown-ups to understand them? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, because the kid can't explain it because they're so young. And they haven't
the kid doesn't understand either.
Yeah, well done. That's really interesting that you say that because they don't often understand. Sometimes they can't actually put into words or understand themselves why they're having a big emotional moment. Do you sometimes still have those moments?
Definitely.
Yeah. When Mummy and Daddy are not really understanding and we're, getting impatient or something like that, how does it make you feel?
It makes me feel annoyed because you're not listening when I'm trying to say, because the talking doesn't really help.
Yes. Sometimes I think parents can ask lots of questions when a child is emotional, when really sometimes it's good for us to just be quiet and try to listen to what you're trying to explain, maybe. Right, well, we'll leave it there. I won't keep Freddie much longer because I think he wants to go and do some playing. But thank you so much, Freddie, for joining me on my podcast. I didn't actually plan this episode at all. He's gone off now, but yeah, I didn't plan this episode because it's school holidays here in the UK. It's half term, and this week I knew it would be a slightly shorter episode, but what I had planned out for the episode is something that I think I'm going to use in the future instead. So I thought I'm going to do an off-the-cuff one and speak to one of the children instead. And it's much more sensible speaking to my eldest versus my youngest. I did actually ask him a couple of questions, but I have edited him out because his response was just utter gibberish. So I personally am going to take away my insightful learnings from speaking to my eldest today. I think it's really fascinating getting into the mind of a child, especially because we often think that children who are 7, 8, 9, 10, like those kinds of ages, the golden years are often just viewed as the easy ages, because it is easier. I have to say, my children are at a really lovely age at the moment. They're 5 and 8, and it's really lovely. Everything feels so much easier than it did in the past, but we often forget that once they hit those ages of ease where everything feels nice and calm, not all the time obviously, but I think we do forget that they still feel those big emotions, and when they do, we think that they are always going to be much easier at coping with them and managing them and regulating themselves through them. But I have to say, I know my eldest is definitely a sensitive child. He does still have to have me co-regulating with him when he's having these big emotions and meltdowns, and they are few and far between these days. But when he does have them, I really have to be mindful that he needs that connection time. So, you know, the same rules count for when you have a toddler versus an 8-year-old. Like he said, they just want to be heard. They just want to be listened to. And it's important for them to have their voice heard. I have to say, he did mention, I did edit it out, but he did mention that if he had his perfect day, he would love to just feel heard and for people to listen. So he mentioned it a couple of times. I had to cut it out because there was a load of noise from my other child, and it just the recording wasn't quite working. But that just made me feel really sad in a way, because I really want him to know that his voice does count, and that if he's loud enough and confident enough, people will listen when he's at school and that kind of thing. Also, I've done a lot of work on myself to ensure that I'm not always sitting at my desk, and that I do take time for self-care. And I have to say, I do make sure I have a lot of times throughout the week where I'm spending time on me, and I'm so much better at it these days. I really do practice what I preach when I talk about having, you know, your morning walks in nature and making time for meditation or a bath or whatever it might be. Each day I have my morning walk in nature. I have my morning coffee and intention setting before I start my work. I might do a bit of yoga or just brief 5-minute stretching. And at lunchtime, I make time to go and stand in the garden and get some more vitamin D on my face. And if it gets to 6 o'clock and I feel like I am tired or have had a hard day at work, or I am overstimulated from the kids because they're being noisy, I will say to my husband, I'm just going to take myself off for 10 minutes and just go and get some peace and quiet. And I might pop upstairs and just listen to a meditation or read my book, or just have some peace and quiet away from everyone, because I'm quite sensitive to noise. So I will take myself away deliberately so that I'm allowing myself to be in my window of tolerance. And I know how important that is for me and my nervous system, so that I can be the best parent I can be for my kids. So I think it's interesting when Freddie said, I need to relax more and not worry so much about finishing off my work, because there have been days where they are playing and wanting to perhaps have some connection time with me, and I might still be finishing off bits and bobs on the computer. It doesn't happen very often, but it's interesting that he still notices that. And I think I'm going to now be mindful of keeping those boundaries a bit more strict. I also found his response to the question about being in charge of the world for a day and what would he change. And it was just basically all about nature and the environment. So I think it's great that obviously kids these days at school are learning so much more about the impact of environmental factors and the future of the planet. So, he does talk about it a lot, actually, and he often he will ask to do things like go litter picking. So, yeah, they are definitely going to be a bit more mindful compared to previous generations, and that's great. So I think I'll leave it there. As I said, this is a shorter episode. And we're also off to a trampolining place this afternoon with, huge ball pits and all sorts of fun. So the weather's not looking great. We're going to go and do that. And I'm thinking of you all this half term. Hope you're all surviving okay. And if you're juggling things, I really do hope that it's not been too stressful. If you have been listening along to the podcast and have any feedback, please do get in touch. I love any kind of feedback, good or bad. And if you are struggling with bedtimes with your little ones at the moment, I still have my Bedtime Bliss bundle available for just £7. So head to the link in the show notes. It's incredible. It has about 6 different resources in there, which are all just fantastic for supporting you in supporting your child to get to bed easily, calmly, and with no stress. Very soon I have a new resource coming out which I have started working on, and it's going to be your answer to easy mornings. So if you currently have stressful mornings when you're getting your children ready to nursery, the childminder, to school, maybe you ask them to put on their shoes 10 times and you end up screaming at them, perhaps they don't eat all their breakfast and it drives you mad, whatever it is, I've got my stress-free morning toolkit coming out very soon, so keep an eye on my socials for that. It is going to be another low-cost offer but packed full of value because I love helping mums to get to where they need to be. So thank you so much for joining me this week. Check the show notes for other ways that you can work with me. All my links are there, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.